I will go ahead and talk about community growth. So um, a little bit about me. I go by Chango Unchained, and I've been at Cosmos since 2017. And prior to that, I got really into Bitcoin in 2014. I first heard about it through a miner friend of mine, a friend who did Bitcoin mining, and then he talked to me about it for a little bit, and I got very I became very enthusiastic about the technology because right from there I realized that there's a lot of potential in cryptocurrency and what it could do. And here we are. Before that, I was working at NASA, at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. The Jet Propulsion Laboratory is one of the NASA laboratories. They specialize in sending the rovers to Mars, and so I was working in the business and operations office doing contracts, basically. But ultimately, the thing that really piqued my interest was ultimately Bitcoin. And so that's why I'm here now, 6 years later, because it was just so compelling. And I think for the rest of my life, I'm going to be working on something like this. So in this meetup, I'm going to go over a couple of models very quickly, just to give you the framework about how building a decentralized community looks like. And so, we'll go over the entire industry overview just to get a sense of where we are today with all of cryptocurrency. And then in the following slides, we'll talk about how the Ethereum community was built up to where it is right now, and for that to kind of set the bar on community building. And then we'll talk about how Cosmos community is relative to that, and where we are, and what the future outlook is. A lot of you must be familiar with the technology adoption lifecycle. This is Jeffrey Moore's model, where he outlined an early market of basically technologists who come up with novel new ideas that have never been invented, right? These people invent technologies. And then there's also the early majority, which is visionaries, or people who otherwise see the potential of very early technologies, such as yourselves and myself, and then see that in the future there's a lot of potential to be realized from this technology that you just learned about. And then there's the chasm. The chasm is ultimately this gulf that technologies need to cross in order to reach the mainstream. And that's ultimately where we are all trying to go as an industry for, greater adoption of this technology. Otherwise, it's going to remain this, novel, high-tech thing, but ultimately it's going to fall to the wayside if nobody uses it. So in the past the chasm, we have a late majority. These people tend to adopt technologies much later, after they've been sufficiently developed. And then, after that, it's the laggards. So if you think of a technology adoption life cycle in terms of the internet, then, people like our parents would fall into the laggards category, right? Because like my mother, for example, is still learning how to use text messages with her smartphone. So those people fall into the laggards category. And then whereas people who are the early market of internet adopters, they were the ones who were building all of the protocols that were first used, such as TCP/IP or the email protocol. We have the PST model, and this is you could adapt it to the technology adoption lifecycle, where you have the visionaries and early adopters, and early majority called pragmatists. And you could equate them to something akin to pioneers, settlers, and town planners. So you could, there's like a one-to-one mapping on the technology adoption lifecycle. The reason these people are important for your community is because they bring different attitudes and skill sets to developing your community at an early stage. So so the techies or the pioneers in the early days is something like the Jaquans or the Vitalics, right? You have to have these sorts of people who are able to come up with novel new ideas that will then be stolen by the next person, and that next person being the settlers. The settlers are the sort of people who identify trends in emerging markets, and they identify these trends that most people do not yet see. So they could connect very loosely held dots, and then they're able to see a bigger picture. And so you need these types of people to be persuaded about the potential innovation that the pioneers came up with. And then after that, as your technology evolves and as those settlers develop like stronger narratives, and maybe they help the pioneers innovate and iterate towards a more succinct product, then we have town planners who come into the picture, and then they're able to industrialize on the idea. So by industrialize, I mean they're able to create tangible products out of the early technology. So again, if we're going to talk about the PST model, we're seeing that pioneers are very rare. They're very poorly understood. You know, they such as, if you think about Vitalik, the characteristics that define him is like he's like kind of aspy. You know, he's like, there's like very few of them around, but then they come up with really, really novel new ideas in a way that is like creating something that is inventive, right? Like very few people can do that. And then if you talk about the settlers, again, these people are able to look at the markets and adopt these new ideas and able to bring your idea to market. And then obviously town planners are people who create businesses around your technology. But yeah, that's the PST model. That's the basic idea. And in every single organization, you need to have a mix of them, but you need to have the awareness to be able to, you need to have the awareness to be able to, sorry, my train of thought was interrupted because I had to let's, you know, Gartner's hype cycle, right? Gartner's hype cycle describes this, this like, when a technology is first introduced, it goes on this like upward climb on like a roller coaster, for example, right? So I would say that in 2017, the entire industry went on this upwards climb, you know, towards the ICO boom, and then that was when things got really exciting, right? Everyone had really inflated expectations. The entire market was exuberant, and then boom, you know, we just went crashing down, and now we're kind of in the middle of crypto winter, is what I like to call it right now. So we, like, if you are to imagine, so where we are, if you imagine the technology adoption lifecycle, there is the chasm that we talked about, right? Before technology gets across the chasm onto the mainstream. We are in the middle of the chasm right now, I would say. before there's mainstream adoption of cryptocurrency. DeFi has sort of really helped rally exuberance in Ethereum and for the rest of the ecosystem so far. And so I expect that we'll see another boon upwards as we enter into like the next bull market, basically. So that's in general where we are as a market. And if we're going to talk about Ethereum as a case study, right? Ethereum has arguably done the best job of building a really strong decentralized community. And I'm going to break down exactly what component pieces went into that. So what's been circulating on crypto Twitter these last few days is something called the D5 Vortex. And that's, if I'm to describe the visual to you, it's like the outer spirals of the vortex has all the primitive like component pieces that is needed to make a decentralized technology succeed. So in the outer circle, there's things like block rewards, staking, there's developer grants and bounties through a foundation, there's wrapped crypto assets so that you could create derivatives, there's on-ramps and price feeds, and by on-ramps I mean something like fiat to crypto on-ramps. So what Gemini or Coinbase or Kraken provide, those are such necessary on-ramps to allow for the vortex to kind of happen. And the last one is transaction fees and gas. And then if you go into the inner circle, then there's all of the different DeFi protocols that make up DeFi, right? That's liquidity, there's fees, there's yield, there's assets, and then there's fund management. And then all of that entire, all of those key ingredients lend to the perfect storm of creating this feedback loop of all the different projects that are working independently and competitively, but somehow they all sort of align themselves in a way that is becomes like a virtuous cycle for each of the projects to feed into one another. So this vortex kind of has all the component pieces of like pioneers, settlers, and town planners doing their own thing that adds value to the ecosystem, but at the same time rewards themselves. And that's the type of virtuous feedback loop that any project needs to get itself into and able to succeed as a decentralized community. Just Google D5 Vortex and you will see what I'm referring to. So Cosmos, where we are at right now is we are in year one post mainnet launch. But like I've said, I've been working in Cosmos since 2017. So in reality, it's like 2 years pre-launch plus 1 year post-launch, right? It's like all of the work that has been unseen in the community pre-launch has lent itself to everything that you see emerge out of that work now. And so Ethereum, it should be the same story for Ethereum, right? Ethereum is now 5 years in, and it's compared to Cosmos much more mature, but at the same time, like, you know, Bitcoin is even older than that. And so that the market cap is even bigger, and community is arguably the community is there, not quite like Ethereum, but it's a little bit different, but same concept, right? It's like you have, if you are able to get the right component pieces at the very beginning, such as getting the right combination of pioneers, settlers, and town planners, like in the same room, like coming up with different ideas, and then finally pushing something that is productized to the market. And if all of you are ideologically aligned, you know, that is a recipe for success. And that's basically what you want to do. If we're to talk about the vortex, right? If I'm not saying that this is the D5 vortex, there's like a Cosmos vortex, right? The outer vortex right now in year one is we have developer grants and bounties, right? We have Tendermint Inc. has something called Cosmos Community Contributor Grants. We have Interchain Foundation Grants, which is a separate entity, but at the same time, it's the foundation that provides funding for all of the ecosystem development in Cosmos. So there's two. There's those two. We have block rewards and staking, right? People are able to bond their atoms and get more atoms for doing so. There's transaction fees and gas, and that's also in atoms. And then we have on-ramps and price feeds. We have on-ramps such as Coinbase, Binance, and the different exchanges that allow people to get their hands on atoms. Then there's different price feeds, which is like MicroTick and Band Protocol. So those are all in place. The one thing that we are missing right now is wrapped crypto assets. Currently, at the forefront of research discussions, we are talking about staking derivatives, which in short is taking the atom and creating a derivative out of the atom, right? So you're synthesizing a derivative financial vehicle out of real atoms. And the reason for doing that is because the incentive to stake atoms is there. And so you want to stake atoms and keep earning atom block rewards. However, you also want liquidity. And so if you want liquidity, you could create a synthetic asset, such as like a staking derivative on another chain, and then you're able to do various creative like financial engineering from that synthetic asset. It's the same thinking behind all of the financial assets in the traditional world with creating derivatives and then derivatives off of those derivatives. And ultimately, we have the subprime mortgage debacle. But we're not going to talk about that. We're only talking about derivatives in crypto right now. We haven't gotten there yet. Okay, in the inner vortex, there's we need liquidity, we need decentralized exchange, we need something like yield farming, lock drops, heart spoons, and collateralized derivatives. So derivatives on top of derivatives. We're gonna have that in the future, but that is stuff that is year 2 and beyond. So that's something that you could look forward to. And as soon as we have all of those component pieces in place, then we're able to create something like the Cosmos Vortex, right? We're going to have like a big bang, and then it's just going to take off. Let's say if all the ingredients are there. I want to talk a little bit about how we actually got here, right? It's at a very high level. It really comes down to identifying raw talent, identifying key partners, and aligning the right incentives. So in the very, very, very early stages of the project, this was before ICOs took a boom, but there was this obvious use case for launching cryptocurrencies, which is crowdfunding. So if we were able to crowdfund, then we're able, in exchange for a coin, then we're able to kind of bootstrap this whole thing. And that's basically the genesis of how most projects in 2017 got bootstrapped themselves. Obviously, we're in a different landscape right now, especially in the US. We have a much more strict regulatory guidelines. But still, once you have bootstrapped somehow, right, then you have to start identifying the talent. And identifying that raw talent is sort of an art form mixed with experience. And you basically need to discover that kind of talent that hasn't been discovered by the rest of the ecosystem. And so we have the really early people who joined. We had, Sunny Agrawal, we had Chris Goad, we had Billy Rennekamp, Yoon, these, I'm naming names here, but these are concrete examples about raw talent that was like out there in the world, just kind of, these people just hacking away on their computers. Suddenly they join your community through some signaling mechanism. And by signaling mechanism, I mean, maybe you throw a hackathon and then you use that hackathon to have to discover the talent, and then you incentivize that talent through, you know, funding them or giving them a grant or something. But basically, you have now seeded your grassroots community. And if they are ideologically aligned with you, or if they find your technology very interesting, right, then you have this pool of very passionate, very smart people who are able to take your project further, basically. And so you want to surround yourself with these early innovators and visionaries, these technologists, or the, you know, according to the Simon Wardley model, the pioneers and the settlers. And these people are not only talented, but they're smart enough to be able to take the dots that you lay out in front of them, and they're able to see the bigger picture ultimately, right? People who are able to see like the 5 to 10 year vision and say like, that makes sense, and I want to join your cause and like dedicate a significant chunk of my career to furthering that cause, for example. So you need that first and foremost, and that is what we did. The second piece is you have to identify key regions with the resources that you need, right? So for example, right now, we have identified India, right? India is a very promising region with a lot of raw talent there, right? Like very smart people, lots of programmers and engineers, and that is the key region and the logic behind why we're saying we want to penetrate this this region. And you got to identify local evangelists, you know, people like Abhitesh and Persistence, who are incentive aligned with you. And by incentive aligned, I mean, you know, if they're building a project called Persistence and it's you know, it's using the open source framework that you have built, then if Persistence succeeds, it also lends to the success of Cosmos, and therein lies the right incentives to produce this virtuous feedback loop. So so India is one of those examples. Another one is China. You know, we have a key partner called Iris. You know, Iris Network has been with us ever since 2017. You know, as early as when I joined, and so these key partners are not only operationally capable, but they have like access to the local communities, and they're able to bridge the gap between the local communities and like your core team, for example. And then you could start to kind of start to proliferate, right? We're starting to grow now. And then, you know, thirdly, obviously, if you get incentive alignment right here, then you're able to make it so that both you and your external partner is able to succeed and kind of build your success off of one another. And then you kind of want to just rinse and repeat, right? You not only identify key regions that are strategic to your vision, but you also identify key types of projects that address a certain use case that potentially is the next killer app of your project. So for example, you know, if I put my Ethereum Foundation hat on, it's like they you know, Vitalik came up with the automated market maker function, and then a project called, you know, Uniswap Hayden goes to Vitalik and says, hey, you know, give me funding, I'm going to build this out for you, I'm going to actually implement this idea, and then therein lies the partnership, right? And then now they've spurred decentralized exchange, and then, you know, the same thing could happen with like yield farming or like collateralized debt, and all these different use cases. And suddenly now you have all of the component pieces right there for your project to enter into this feedback loop, or the D5 Vortex. And so that's kind of the goal for Cosmos, right? It's like we have identified all these strategic component pieces, and now it's a matter of identifying the partner, aligning incentives, and then entering everybody into this this loop, into this vortex. In short, the takeaway is that there's no shortcuts to community building, right? People, there's a lot of misconceptions in the early days with community managers. It's like their pitch would be that I'm gonna open up this Telegram channel, and then we're gonna like get all these fake users on it to pump up the number of people that you have in your Telegram channel, and we're gonna do all these things to like, you know, pump up your vanity metrics and like, you know, star your GitHub and watch it, or we're going to like follow you on Twitter. But ultimately, those you could see like the projects that went that route really didn't last very long. They sort of faded out of relevancy over time, right? As we've seen right now with this bear market. So you could really tell when a project has really like laid down the foundations for its community and for its technology in a way that is long lasting and sustainable, versus the ones who went with like, oh, I'm going to hire a community manager and like boost up these numbers, and then we're going to like look, you know, very big and bloated, but in reality there's like nothing material supporting it. So, you know, the takeaway is like, as with anything, you get out what you put in, and you really need to, you know, identify the raw talent and understand the model that that is behind it, right? You understand who's pioneers, settlers, town planners, and then who's actually capable of taking this project to the next level. And that's who you want to be part of your initial community set. And then it starts to grow, right? Every new, strong, talented person that you get into your community can evangelize this to like 5 other ones who are just like themselves. And then those people evangelize it to 5 other ones, and then you have this exponential growth of your community. And that's where we are. Okay, how do you become, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, just to jump in here, this is a very interesting fact, and I guess a lot of people would like to know that, as you were mentioning, different components. So what exactly makes Cosmos so unique is, so just taking an example of Ethereum or EOS or any other blockchain, is that most of it is driven by single narrative from a single person. So say Ethereum is majorly driven by Vitalik, right? But when you look at Cosmos, the beautiful part of it is it's very decentralized at its core as well. So like you have ICF, but under ICF, you have multiple organizations working on different things to bring together and just build this web of different applications, validated network. And so like, what is your thought process on that? Like, how do that goes? Because I read a couple of theories that why a lot of people don't bring in other people as the leaders into the core team is that they're not able to drive the technology forward. But Cosmos took a very different approach. They brought in different leaders in forms of these organizations, informal, Tendermint, inclusion, there's a Goric, still able to achieve their goal. So what is your thought on that?
Yeah, oh, well, there's a very, there's a practical reason to this. It's that the social graph in Ethereum is very different, just in the same way as it's different in Bitcoin, right? It all has to do with the genesis of these different projects. And it ultimately is an outcome of the type of leadership that is there. So, you know, if we say that, okay, the idea of Cosmos came from Jaquan, but, you know, so someone like Jaquan really does not like want to be that sort of single like face of a thing, and then he doesn't want everything to kind of like escalate up to him the same way it happened in Ethereum, right? It's kind of like every single project kind of like coalesces under like the umbrella of Vitalik, you know? And like in Bitcoin, it's like every single like community and faction kind of boils up to Satoshi, right? And Satoshi left. And so Cosmos is a lot more structured like Bitcoin on the community side, because there is not that like single head guy or like messiah figure in that sense.
So do you,
And
yeah, just do you think that hinders the progress of your
no,
overall goal?
no, even though these are structured a lot differently, it's um, all these different projects operating in this more, I want to say, capitalistic or free market sense, um, is going to lend to all these different projects having more autonomy, and then they kind of get together once in a while, talk about some ideas and then like flesh those ideas out, and then if those ideas hold water, then they tend to receive a grant from the Interchain Foundation. So yeah, even though it doesn't have like a vital, even though Cosmos doesn't have a Vitalik like figurehead, it still gets the job done
And
because all these different entities are addressing different aspects of what's needed.
yeah, and I've seen this majorly in Cosmos, if not right. There's a question as well that Cosmos allows a lot of governance and decision making to its community. And how did Cosmos derive that model? Because you have proposals, and then everybody can vote on it, and then the decision is taken. That's like first of its kind of model where it allows people to participate openly so much about even the most core foundations. So what do you think, how that thought process came in, that on-chain governance by the community?
It's an iteration of the lack of governance observed in Bitcoin and Ethereum. Like, both those projects came first, and the governance of those proof of work chains is very implicit, right? So it's very like it leans on social consensus a lot, whereas Cosmos saw what happened with when Ethereum was hacked in the DAO hack, then it forked right into ETC. That was the that was sort of the real world example about how not having explicit governance lent itself to chaos. You know what I mean? So Cosmos looked at this and we said, okay, well, this is an iteration on that. Like how do we address this governance problem with these other proof of work chains and make it explicit? And so that's kind of birthed the on-chain governance genesis. And yeah, it seemed to work really well. The model behind it is taken from the U.S. model of like how voting works in the U.S., which is you just take like a like if you wanted to pass a proposal, what you would do is you would propose, and then you would sorry, I'm not describing this very well because I'm not very literate in the various factions of bureaucracy in the U.S. But roughly speaking, you propose a bill just the same way as you make a proposal on the Cosmos Hub, and then you allow the representatives to vote, and then follow that process, and that's it. It basically mirrors that kind of democratic process one-to-one. It's like very simple governance system, and then it's a matter of implementing it on chain.
Yeah, and that's amazing. I guess that's a route towards the proper decentralization. It's like not only decentralization at how the protocol is used, but how the protocol is built, and that's wonderful. Just if you are open to taking more questions, maybe we can start with that. There are very good questions out there in the chat. More.
Sorry, what? You're taking questions from?
Can I take questions from the participants? They have. Would you like to answer those?
Oh yeah.
Sure. So there's one question that concept of interoperability is quite new, and people still are not very aware about how interoperability works. So how Cosmos aims to educate the communities, and how do you think that the entire interoperability ecosystem will grow? So take example like Cosmos, Polkadot, and if you have in mind any other interoperability protocols.
Right. So actually the first person who came up with this fully fleshed out idea was Jaquan. And then he came up with this idea that in the future there's going to be a need to have different blockchains communicate with one another, just in the same way that websites on the internet need to communicate with one another. It seemed at the time like the obvious route, and so this was in 2016 when that happened. And then now, as the ecosystem is kind of matured, a lot more people are starting to realize why interoperability amongst blockchains is important, right? Because it creates this like meta internet composed of blockchains. And so projects like Polkadot and even ETH2, who address interoperability within their own blockchain networks, do it very differently than Cosmos, because the Cosmos vision, like to this day, it's like Cosmos is the primary pioneer of just chain to chain communication, right? So like one chain communicates to the other, another chain communicates to the hub, and then they're all connected to each other through a hub. And so we have this like a web of blockchains that are all interconnected. So given that, if you compare it to Polkadot or even ETH2, you know, Polkadot is kind of like its own ecosystem. So it has like different parachains within it, but they're still very much in this like single pipeline called the Polkadot network. Just in the same way as the different smart contracts are currently on ETH1, right? There's like one single EVM pipeline that all of these different smart contracts are composed and interoperating with each other. They're still in ETH1, right? They're still not talking to a wholly separate blockchain. And that's the same model as Polkadot. Polkadot is still this like one single blockchain network, despite having different parachains within it. So the different, you could think of the parachains as a smart contract in ETH1, and like the Polkadot network is still this like one giant EVM instance. So compared to that, where Cosmos sits would be like, here's Cosmos talks to Polkadot, Cosmos talks to ETH1, and it talks to all these other chains, and those other chains may talk to Polkadot and ETH1. So when we say Cosmos is really this vision of this interchain, right? The Internet of Blockchains. And then when we talk about the Cosmos Hub, the Cosmos Hub is one single blockchain, and that is one component of the entire Cosmos vision, but it doesn't encapsulate all of Cosmos, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's like Cosmos allows all the chains to work even outside Cosmos ecosystem,
Yeah.
which is not so relevant in other networks that are available out there. And a great example of that is maybe Terra or persistence itself, which works independent of, communicates with Cosmos, but can communicate with multiple other blockchains as well. Ethereum, Polkadot, Tezos. So that's actually creating the true web.
Yeah. Whereas in the Polkadot world, the web is very much like an intranet, and the Cosmos vision is that there's going to be an internet, right? Like information, token value, cross contract calls is going to be democratize it across this entire free web, as opposed to like sovereign within itself.
Yeah. Yeah, and so this might come from your experience while you were working for Cosmos to try and focus on growing the community. What do you think helped to engage people with Cosmos community the most? Is it some sort of meetups, or is it online sessions, classes, something like Code with Us? Or it was allowing people the ability to build tools and support them with grants. So what do you think captured the imagination of most people in the blockchain community?
Yeah, it's all of those. It's number one, having a compelling technology, first of all, right? So Cosmos has this reputation of just like being the pioneers of the interoperability space, and it has the talents and the brains to be able to deploy it. So like, first of all, it's a strong idea. It's implemented well. There's a lot of research and academia backing it. There's that, and then there's also the need to bridge that gap between what is a good product to users, right? So you need to be able to communicate the story and tell a compelling narrative to what would be your early adopters and settlers to buy into this vision, and then for them to look deeper into the code, the software itself, and say, this is something solid. This is something that I believe has the potential for the next 10 years, and then I want to buy into that. I'm going to adopt it. So something like persistence, you say that this is like credibly one of the most viable solutions for you to bring a product to market. So there's that. So you need all of that, right? So hackathons, meetups, different developer-led workshops and tutorials, all of that lends itself to telling the story of a good product, an idea, and a vision to the broader ecosystem.
Sure. Thank you so much, Ranga, for that. There's one more question, is that how is it, like, how community is working together to bring the Stargate upgrade to fruition, because that's like the biggest update after the Cosmos Hub launch. So if you could shed some light on that.
Yeah, that's a very interesting one. It's like, a real-time experiment about how all of these different wholly separate entities are coordinating together to bring a project to completion. And I would say that it's the ICF grants process is very much deliverables based. And so each entity has a clearly defined role and responsibility. And so therefore, different entities are not stepping on each other's toes, and they're not doing redundant work, and all of them are kind of coordinating on these various pieces and then trying to, get the tasks out of the way in order to push a project forward. So,
and thank you so much for joining us today. I know it's late for you, and thank you everyone who joined us early morning, I would say, today on Sunday in India.
To be working in the same team necessarily, and therefore your organization doesn't need to bear the overhead of housing all of these people into like a centralized entity. And instead, all you have to do is just open communication channels where these different people who are leading the charge on specific tasks are able to communicate and get together and complete a project. That's what it really is. It's like, it's pretty simple if you just get the operational piece right.
Yeah. And what do you think about Stargate upgrade? Is it going to be the big launch, like taking Cosmos to the moon sort of thing?
Yeah, I view everything as it's certainly not a 0 to 1 moment, because the mainnet launch was that 0 to 1 moment. But I would say, like, everything that we do in Cosmos is an iteration. So it's like, again, you know, to enter into that Cosmos vortex, right? We have to have a lot of different component pieces kind of come together and like link in lockstep. So Stargate is definitely the completion of a very significant milestone. When we launched the mainnet, we said that phase 1 is going to unlock atom transfers. Phase 2's governance is going to governance is going to vote in the unlocking of this transfer. Phase 3 is the launch of IBC, and so with Stargate, we're finally closing, like completing the entire phase of launching the Cosmos Hub mainnet. But after that, right, IBC is just like the first or the second, the early couple stepping stones to get to where we really need to be, which is there needs to be Ethermint, right? Ethermint, for those of you who don't know, it's the EVM compatible Ethereum Tendermint blockchain or zone, the Ethermint zone, that's going to allow smart contracts to either port over and get additional throughput, or spin up a completely new project that is Solidity based on this separate zone from the Ethereum 1 main chain. So Ethermint needs to be launched. And then Peggy, the Ethereum to Cosmos Hub peg zone, also needs to be launched for there to be asset transfer between like ERC20 tokens or ERC721s into and out of the Cosmos Hub and back to the Ethereum ecosystem. So we need those three, right? So there's Ethermint, Peggy, and IBC. All of those three is going to lend itself to like the near completion of the Cosmos vision. And then, you know, after that we have to tackle like, oh, what if we could peg to Bitcoin, you know, and other existing proof of work networks, and then so on and so forth. So I would say that Stargate is a first step to get to those further steps. There's a lot of development that needs to be done, and so we're going nowhere, and all of these innovations are going to be coming down the pipeline soon in the next few years.
Sure. I guess that completes a lot of things, actually. I wanted to ask you answered them. And there's an interesting question. How do you explain Cosmos to 12-year-old? And I guess Chandra touched upon it. It's interesting. And echoing the same thought, it would be like saying to somebody, a kid, that Cosmos is going to be the internet of blockchains. How different websites today, you could sign up with Google, you could sign up with Facebook, to any service. So how is that possible is because all these websites can communicate with each other. So it is easy to say that all the different chains would be connected like a spider web. And I guess that's the simple explanation right in the name, Internet of Blockchains. Cool. I guess that pretty much is what we wanted to cover in this session. I guess what would be really helpful for all the people who came in, and I guess I couldn't allow because of the random names, but if you could share your presentation, I will pass on to everybody so they could sync their thoughts which you shared with the presentation, look after like how the vortex works, how the inner and outer vortex also works.
Okay, sure.
Sure.
Thank you for having me. And let everyone know that on the slides, there's links to resources that they could go to if they want to, engage in the Cosmos community more actively.
Sure thing.
Go to cosmos.network/community.
Absolutely. We'll do that. I will share that in the group as well, right after this. Sure. Thank you so much, Changa.
Have a good Sunday.
You too. Bye bye.